Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here with me is Victoria Clark, star of Kimberly Akimbo, the great new musical on Broadway. And in this show, your character has this genetic disease which causes her to age rapidly. And I think it could have been a case where we were just like watching someone play at being younger, but that's not the case here with what you're doing. And I'm so curious how you approached and figured out how to play that youth of Kimberly.
Well, first of all, hi. Hi, Sam, and hi, everybody who's watching. Thanks for having me on your program. I'm a fan and I've enjoyed your interviews, so this is really fun for me.
Oh, thank you.
Um, would you mind telling me what your experience is watching it? That will
Yeah.
help me answer the question. You said you don't think I'm playing at something?
Yeah, well, it just seems very natural that, you're very believable in your spirit, in your energy as this teenage girl. And it just plays very naturally. So I was wondering how you figured out that, whether it was physically, energetically, how you figured out that youth aspect.
Um, well, first of all, thank you. I think it's a team sport. It takes everything. It takes the vision of it. It takes the costume, the wig. It takes everyone on stage believing that I'm a teenager, right? If they looked at me a little skeptically, or if they didn't pick up what I was putting down, that would also affect it, right? So it's not just what
Sure.
I'm doing. It's that, like the way David Zinn designed the bedroom, the way Sarah Lux designed the costumes, and the way Jared Janis designed the wig, and every single person that's on stage, we all believe it, and the believing of it is what helps tell the story. Um, and then I think my journey towards it was a lot of trial and error. Sometimes, I start from the outside in on this part, and had to decide how she moved. That was one of the
Mm.
things I'm still working on. I don't think I'm really done creating this part. It's still an exploration, but that was the first thing I had to figure out.
Mm. And you're you're also known for your soprano voice, and voices just sound different as we get older from back when we were a teen. Did you have to alter the way you sung this role from how you would normally sing in a musical?
Yes, very much so. I mean, this is a real adjustment from just being able to open my mouth and have whatever I want come out. So I have to be conscious that her vocal cords have aged the way her body has aged, but she's really only been on the planet 15, 16 years. So um, it's very nuanced and it's very technical, uh, but it's a bit of a journey, and I'm going for the most honest sound. Sometimes the sound is kind of raw, so that's been a journey too for me. Is to sometimes make sounds that aren't beautiful, and just be okay with that, the imperfection and the humanity of a sound of a person who's in the act of becoming. She's not a finished product, and none of us are, but my classical training tends to lean more towards, a perfect sound. And so that's been a beautiful learning experience for me.
Yeah. And I think that word humanity you mentioned is kind of like a very key core to this show from my audience perspective anyway. What was it about this character in this show that made you want to come back and to the stage and play this?
Um, Kim she's funny, she's brave, she's courageous, she's wacky, she's not entirely confident. She is really, she's finding her way, as we all are in this world, right? And so there was something so appealing to me about someone who was flawed. I love flawed characters, and that's where I think great theater comes from, characters who are deeply flawed or deeply troubled about something, and there's a puzzle that has to be solved. And I think this show is a giant puzzle. There's a whole song about a puzzle, called Anagram. That's a duet that I sing with Justin Cooley. And I've been telling people, if you like Wordle, if you get up every morning and make your coffee and play Wordle and then do like the many times crossword, you're going to love Kimberly Akimbo, because the whole show is about a child becoming an
Mm.
adult and solving all the problems that come with that, and her impending mortality.
Yeah. Well, with that, it's interesting looking at the casting because, people who are playing your parents are actually younger than you, and then your core scene partner, which it's a really, precious, tender kind of like first love romance between your character and Justin Cooley's. What is that dynamic like when you have like these different generations of people in one cast?
Well, they're all stars to me. It's a cast of all stars. um, Bonnie Milligan, Ali Mozzie, and Steve Boyer have all carried huge shows, and they're all brilliant, and they are so present and so um, brilliant, I think. And so that is a sheer delight. We never do anything the same way twice. We've had so many people come to the show over and over again just to see what we're going to do. We meet people in the autograph line because we can't wait to see what you do tonight, because we really just we get on the train and we really pay attention as much as possible, and we try to make it fresh, like we're making something just for that audience, that performance. With Justin, he's just starting out. This is his first professional job, you know, and he's very fresh and open, and so that's also a joy. And then working with the four other actors, Olivia Hardy and Nina White and Michael Iskander and Fernell Hogan, they are also quite brilliant. And when I'm with them, I do feel like I'm 16, and they inspire me and give me so much energy and support.
Mm. I think one of the moments that sticks out to me as like particularly heartbreaking is when the teens are singing about, oh, well, this doesn't really matter. We're going to go off and do all these things in our life. But for Kim, it really does matter. Um, what is that moment like for you? I think there's many realizations along the way for her like that, of like, this all matters.
Well, in my story that I'm telling there, I woke up not feeling so hot, so I'm not telling anybody that, but my body doesn't feel great in that particular moment. And we're telling that story in subtle ways. You'd have to see it a couple of times to see what everybody's doing, not just me, but there are some hints there. She's not doing so great on that day. And so I think they're dreaming about the future, as all high school students do. I can't wait to get out of here. But for Kim, that's all she has. All she has is this moment. She can't dream about next week even, right? So for her, she doesn't know when, in that cartoon, remember, the Acme cartoons, when the anvil drops, on Roadrunner or whatever, like she doesn't know when the anvil's going to drop. So that's part of the genius of the story, I think, is that the audience doesn't know, and Kim doesn't know, and neither does anyone in her life.
Yeah. And she tries to kind of educate them, I think, along the way. Of course, she has the song "My Disease," which doesn't really go over well for her. Why do you think she tries to do that and put herself in that spotlight that way?
That is the most difficult thing in the show for me. I dread it every night. It is a mountain that's very hard to climb, because you cannot do that scene without acknowledging some pretty heavy stuff. And it's also technically challenging. There's some movement that's challenging, and then vocally very super challenging for me personally. So I think the choice that I've made is that some of those teenagers don't know. Seth knows that her life expectancy is 16, but I don't think everybody knows. I just think they think she looks like an old lady, but they don't know. So this is her opportunity to kind of give her report and tell everybody, but it's mixed with a lot of rage and self-loathing and confusion and chaos. inner turmoil for her. So it's an opportunity for her to say, yeah, I know you guys think I'm a freak, and guess what? Um, I do too in that moment.
Mm. Well, I think, the kind of heartbreak of those moments turns around. I mean, I'm thinking the finale when singing Great Adventure. I don't think there's a dry eye in the house at that point because it feels so hopeful in a way, and calls up a lot of things that we all think in our life. What does that number call up for you?
It's hard to get through.
Mm.
Here we go. I was crying in interviews about Kimberly Akimbo. It's hard to get through because I'm sitting next to Justin, you know,
Mm.
and we always joke. We have all these kind of like morbid jokes about how when he's my age, I'm going to be 100 and I don't know 6 or something. And so I always joke with the kids like, you guys are visiting me in the old folks' home, right? And feeding me my gruel and my your cream of wheat, right? Everybody's going to come visit me, but it's really true. Like, I don't know how I got to be this old. It just happened. I blinked and my son's, almost 29. How did that happen? So it's just life does go by so fast and it is so precious. And there's so many things that can't be put into words, just feelings and chemistry and connection and stories without words. Even though the words of this show are so brilliant, what David Lindsay Abaire has created, not only in his play, but in the book of this musical and the lyrics, those words are glorious and hilarious and heart-stabbingly real. And the music is so glorious. But on top of all that, there's chemistry and things that you absolutely cannot put into words.
Mm.
And that to me is the beauty of life, is the flower that you can't describe or the love that you can't put into words. And this musical dares the audience to kind of go there with us. You know, it doesn't demand it, but it kind of dares it of the audience to say, can you go out on the edge with us?
Yeah, that's really well said. I think that's, the indescribable nature, I feel like, is why there's word of mouth about it, and that people say you have to go see this.
Right,
um
you can't really describe what it's like because it's not about the plot. It's not
mm,
about this girl necessarily. It's more self-reflective in a way. I mean, that's what I hear. I wish I could see it, but from what I hear, people are kind of like, it makes people think, okay, what am I going to do now? What friendship can I repair? Who can I call? Who can I visit? How can I remake my situation so that I'm living a better life and a fuller life? And anything that prompts us to do that, whether it's a prayer or a Broadway musical or a meditation, that to me is extremely worthwhile. And I'm so happy to be a part of something that inspires people to really think about that.
yeah. And I would assume it must be very interesting because you and Justin have such great chemistry in this. Um, but as we get older, I think we're more capable of more reflection, that this piece calls for. So what is it like with him that he's so much younger and maybe isn't at a point in life yet where he's reflecting in the way?
Justin is unusual. He's a very old soul, so he understands
Mm.
a lot more than you would think. He really does. And I'm quite a silly person, and so we meet somewhere in the middle, right? Sometimes I feel like he's teaching me, and he has taught me many things. Everyone in the show has taught me so much, and it's like I'm starting over in a way right now, which is a great place to be. But I think he's look, sometimes we look at each other and we just start sobbing.
As I think this show calls for sometimes, but they're good tears, I think, when people are watching the show.
Yeah, like we don't know how much time we have together as friends, and that's okay because we have
Hmm.
every night. But it's weird that you would meet someone you feel so close to and know that, wow, like it doesn't really matter. Age is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
I told you I can't
um
talk about him without crying.
that's okay.
This is
Well,
really on brand for me right now.
well, we'll take it. Well, let's go, we'll talk about some history then as a
Okay,
cleanser for
sure.
crying. Because I would love to know, you won a Tony for Light in the Piazza. Um, when you're sitting there in that hall, what goes through your head? What does your brain do when your name is called as a Tony winner?
Oh, well, I don't know. Yeah, I was so tired. The Tony days are very long, and then
Mm,
leading up to the Tonys is quite stressful. I hadn't seen any of the other performers or the performances or any of the shows. That's kind of the tragedy. The Oscars, like your work is complete. And
right.
so when you're the Tonys, you're working. You worked the night before. Many of you have done the matinee before you go to the ceremony. So there isn't it's yes, you're trying to be fully present, but a lot of you is just tired, bone tired. Um, so I remember, worrying about things like, is my son's little tuxedo going to stick to his, like my son was just miserable because they turned the AC off during the ceremony so it doesn't affect the broadcast. And it was a very hot day. Um, and his little tuxedo was made out of polyester and he was sticking to the seats and he was just miserable. He was so hot and I was worried about him, and I had a little camera which I had lost. And so I mean, and I all those people that were nominated, Sutton Foster was nominated. It was just an incredible group of women, and I feel like no one ever remembers who wins. I don't. I mean, I remember Aaron Tveit won last year, A, because he's my friend, and B, he was the only one in his category. But you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
never remember. I always know the performances that affect me, and that's sort of what I go by. Is like, okay, like they won the Vicky Tony, so like I figure like that's how I just remember the performances that move and touch and change me. So I think some other people might feel the same in the same way. I mean, it's a great moment. What can I say? It's a great moment, but it's also surreal. It's very surreal.
Yeah. Well, we were talking before, mentioning how crazy it is to sort of meet someone and thinking about this music, you don't know how much time you have with them and you don't know what life is going to throw at you. And I think there's a lot of like actors out there who are really hoping for like that big Tony moment or something that's going to be, their big moment that gets people to finally pay attention in this industry. What is your kind of advice for those people who are toiling away and working away who haven't found that moment yet?
Life is very mysterious, isn't it? Um, I never expected to be an actor. I never planned to be an actor. And then I've tried to walk away from it many times. And I just keep getting pulled back into it. So I think the best advice I can give is be open. Just be open. Like put one foot in front of the other, live your life, pay attention. If you do find yourself in a rehearsal room with people you admire, don't be afraid to say, I've seen you, and this is why your work matters to me. Because not only will you make a connection with that person, that is such a gift to the other person you're speaking to because they can start to understand, well, what am I doing that's effective, right? That's very important information for artists. Especially for actors, we can't see what we do in the moment. Like we can't like run to the wings and watch the rushes of what we just did like that day. Like we put it out there and we put it down, and that's it. We don't see it. So to tell a stage actor what they've done that moves you or changed you is very valuable information. And I think the other thing is never stop training. Just get yourself in class. That's a great way to meet people, and just never stop. I'm still working on everything. Everything. My voice, my speaking voice, my singing voice, my body, my flexibility, my mind, my spirit. It's like because what this is all we have to tell the story,
Mm,
and this. So all those things need to be shiny and tuned up and open.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to watch you in this show. Thanks for talking about it with me. And For everyone watching, subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep up with us this season. Victoria, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Sam. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Good
You
luck to
too.
you.